on in Chris's hand, and maybe try and plan his turns around the information he gets. He's also got a Force of Will and an Oko, so he's probably looking to do something semi-aggressively.
Yeah, that Force of Will means that we can get down an early threat and protect it against something like that one ring that is in Chris's hand and say, you know what, you might want to invest a whole bunch of mana. I'm going to invest 0 mana, but I am going to invest 2 cards and 1 point.
Unfortunately for Daniel here, if you look at the top card of Chris's side of the screen, that is a Cavern of Souls, I believe, which is going to make that Force of Will not very useful against his creatures. So it's going to have to be used for something like the One Ring, which is not a bad target for it. Yeah. But it means he's not going to have the option in case things start getting out of hand.
For sure, for sure. I've been really liking Force of Will, like watching people play it out.
Yeah.
It's this free card that allows you to protect your combo, or it allows you to counter their combo, and produces like these board states where you can have a turn 1 Tameo, for instance, and go, you know what, I'm going to ride this to victory.
Yeah, it's a swingy card indeed. It can just change the tempo of the game so dramatically. So Daniel, after having marked down Chris's hand, considers what he's going to do next. So he's got a basic forest in his hand, and an Arid Mesa as his 2 mana sources. So this Arid Mesa is going to be a bit tight in terms of what mana he wants here. So I imagine he's probably getting a Tundra to cast this Preordain.
Yeah. I think that there was a bit of a consideration there from Hohaus to consider, hey, do I want to play this Preordain, or do I want to keep it to pitch to the Force of Will?
That is a big consideration indeed, because the Preordain isn't necessarily going to draw you a blue card, and the Preordain itself is the blue card that you can always pitch.
Yep.
So he does still have the Oko in his hand to pitch if he really needs to, in case Chris draws something very ridiculous. But Daniel is probably scared of what Chris has put on top of his deck with the Devourer of Destiny.
Yeah, that is a reasonable concern, especially knowing about the Cavern of Souls as well. You might be thinking, you know what, I need to find some more action. Or maybe it's actually just putting some instants and sorceries in the bin so that I can play my Murktide Regent and make it a fatty.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's always good to build up these resources early, because the sooner you can land that Murktide, Eldrazi can have a hard time dealing with it if it hasn't got its removal.
Yeah, for sure. So this first creature coming out, I believe it's a 2/2 from MH3 that says that all of your colorless spells that cost 6 or more cost 1 or less to cast. Is that right?
Yeah, I believe it's also an Eldrazi Lord. I could be wrong on that one.
Yeah. It that heralds the end.
So other colorless creatures you control get +1/+1, and color spells with mana value 7 or less. 7 or more, sorry, cost 1 less.
Yeah, okay. So it allows those big Eldrazi spells to come out early.
Yep, and we have an Abergasto, and I can't even remember the name of that card. It's one of the Assassin's Creed cards that's come out, which has been seeing play in quite a few of these colorless decks. Can we pull that card up?
Yeah, that's a really interesting one. On the other side of the board, Daniel Hohaus has played another MH3 card, Ajani. We've seen a lot of work from Ajani.
Yeah. Chris not having anything to play on his turn 3 means that Daniel might be looking to develop this Oko here and really try and cement the board state as much as he can.
So yeah, Oko, obviously, really powerful card. I want to ask you, Kakawa, if it's your only blue card, do you play out the Oko knowing that it's a really powerful card that you don't really want to pitch, or do you play a different 3-drop?
Probably a different 3-drop. Daniel knows that Chris has the One Ring in hand, and that can be very powerful, but at the same time, Oko's a pretty decent answer to the One Ring. So he may be afraid of something more scary, like the Khan that Chris has in his hand, but luckily Daniel has a Ponder in his hand, so he is going to be able to pitch that if something goes wrong.
Yeah, just do both. Play the Oko and have the Force backup.
And Chris's 4th land here is Bajuka Bog, coming into play tapped. But it is going to take away that graveyard from Daniel, making Murktide and other things a bit weaker.
Yep. And so we see that food token come into play with Oko, and a choice not to attack with the 2/1 Cat Warrior. You're going to have to fill us in. Why would you not attack your Cat Warrior into 2/2, maybe start getting aggressive and start reducing that life total?
I think Daniel has chosen to value Oko's loyalty here, and he doesn't want to block with the Ajani, because then the Ajani dies, and that seems like a pretty poor trade. And something like a Reality Smasher might then be able to come through. So I think leaving it to block as a way of trading with if that heralds the end, as well as like just making sure the Oko lives.
Yeah, okay. So 2 damage, not as powerful as 2 loyalty points on your Oko.
No. While Daniel is going to have to win the traditional way against Eldrazi, which can be a little daunting, especially as Eldrazi start getting to larger and larger mana, but Daniel being able to remove It That Heralds the End and attack with 3 creatures after Oko turns the food into an elk.
Yeah, so Bolt coming in, and then we're attacking for 3, 4, 5, 6 damage on the board. So really putting himself in a commanding position and still having that Force of Will.
So Chris casting the One Ring. Daniel choosing not to force it with the expressive iteration.
I love this play.
He's got the Oko. He's going to elk the One Ring. I'm sure Sauron's not happy with that. Doesn't fit around his finger anymore.
Yeah. So elk here instead means that I've still got my Force of Will backup.
Still got the Force of Will backup. Also has a Solitude which he can now play, and the expressive iteration for later as a grindy piece. Chris missing his 5th land drop as well. Things might start looking a little hairy for him if he can't find some fast mana to get the cards out of his hand quick enough.
So a couple of options here for Hohaus. He can keep the Solitude open, he can keep the hard cast Force of Will open, or he can play that expressive iteration in hand. And then the question is, what do I do with this Oko? I think that one, the last one's a bit sorted.
Yeah, the Oko is almost certainly elking the One Ring. In this situation, I probably am playing a bit tighter. I think I'm leaving open Solitude and Force of Will because it seems...
we
missed that.
Here. We missed something here.
Stolen the ring.
Okay, so you can have an elk still, but I'm going to have that One Ring, thank you very much.
Even has the Solitude to get rid of the elk.
Yep. And have Force of Will back up.
Yep.
So, Oko, Thief of Crowns. We all know about the first 2 abilities. Tick up, get a food. Tick up, turn into an elk. But there's another one, which I believe is -5. So we've seen Oko go from 7 down to 2, which is exchange control of a artifact or creature with power 3 or less, and then exchange it with an opponent's artifact or creature with power 3 or less.
Yeah, so stealing the One Ring, it is going to deal him some damage, but he's going to draw so many cards. And Chris looks like he's picked up his 5th land drop. Still can't cast the Ugin in his hand. Matter Reshaper might have to, or Kozilek's Channeler might just have to stick around and hope it sticks. But Daniel, ready with answers.
All the answers. 5 mana out, has cracked that fetch and just said, you know what? I don't want to be messing around with this fetch in case you have got any reactions or something sneaky. So I'm going to crack now so that I've got my Force of Will open, I've got my Solitude open, and I'm good to go. And I'm going to hopefully take a good number of cards out of this One Ring.
Yeah, and the elk that Daniel's given Chris isn't even able to attack particularly well because it can just be blocked by the Ajani token and then flip Ajani, and then there's just going to be more and more cats coming out. You're a cat fan.
I am a cat fan. Both Ajani and cats in real life.
What is your 3rd favorite cat in Magic?
3rd favorite cat. So Ajani's up there. Miri is up there. Look, I'm actually just going to say Miri's my favorite cat.
Miri's your favorite cat?
That's my answer for you.
Yeah, Miri the Cursed or Miri of the Weatherlight?
Miri of the Weatherlight.
I remember a lot of Miri the Cursed. That was always a fun card to have in my high school playgroup.
Yeah. I actually remember a Nationals grinder event where I was trying to grind in to qualify for Nationals.
Yeah.
And it was a sealed event, and I opened Damnation as well as Miri the Cursed.
That's a powerful pool.
Yeah.
And also powerful, this Khan. This Khan is going to shut off Daniel's One Ring that he has stolen.
Yeah.
So this One Ring going to be doing a lot of damage if it's not answered. So Force of Will on the Khan because the Cavern of Souls is still in play, so he can't save it for a creature. It's probably about as good as it's getting at the moment.
Yep, I reckon that's a smart play by Daniel and really shows how restrained he was in letting the One Ring resolve and then being able to use that Force of Will on something later on.
Paying full retail for it as well, meaning that he has the expressive iteration still in his hand for later.
Yeah.
Looks like...
It's pretty amazing here.
Oh, so Oko can't take the One Ring. Believe it only takes creatures.
It only takes creatures. So we're going to pull up the details of Oko and let's have a little chat about what kind of things we do in this kind of situation, considering the board state?
Yeah, a lot of time has happened since it's been taken, so the judges are going to have a bit of a call here, and it'll be interesting to see what fix they come up with.
Yeah, so -5 on Oko is exchange control of target artifact or creature you control and target creature an opponent controls with power 3 or less. So we missed that one.
Well, you can steal the One Ring if you elk it.
That is true. That is true. So I guess I guess there is a way around that.
Yeah.
And then you just got to somehow unelk it.
Unelk it, yeah. How are we unelking a ring?
I actually don't know.
All right, having a look at another one of our matches here. It looks like we've got a blue-red prowess deck against another value deck playing Zuranorb Crucible and presumably Fastbond. So a combo kill that exists still in a creature base, probably utilizing a lot of land synergies.
Yeah, yeah. Or it could just be yamming those 3 in there with a Bright Glass Gearhog.
Ooh, that's true. A Fire Blast coming out with a Slick Shot attacking. This is my favorite kind of thing to see.
And we're already sacrificing some lands just to stay alive here. So we're sacrificing even more lands just to stay alive here.
All the lands being sacrificed.
Yeah, and the game being sacrificed as well.
And the game being sacrificed.
Yeah, this blue-red prowess deck, it can come out of the gates.
It kills out of nowhere. You think you're taking 1 damage and then 2 damage, and then you're taking 35 damage.
Oh, absolutely fantastic stuff from blue-red there.
Slick Shot Show Off, definitely my favorite card of OTJ.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting card. The plot allowing you to keep it in the bay and commit mana to it still, so powerful. Just being able to tax your opponent's mana just by leaving it in exile. I've had games where I've just played Slick Shot, plotted it, and never even brought it out.
So the threat of the Slick Shot.
Yeah, because your opponent is such a scary card that your opponent is having to leave mana open so often. You end up just getting such a huge mana advantage just by plotting it.
Yeah, for sure.
Because even if they've got a Fatal Push, that's 1 mana for 1 turn, 2 turns, 2 mana. On the 3rd turn, it's 3 mana. You've gotten a single mana advantage over the course of that.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, you're not the one holding up mana because you've got everything else to do.
I tell you what, I was doing some testing with Sam Way for the Pro Tour.
Yeah.
And I was saying how I'd been playing on Arena and that this mice matchup was pretty good.
Okay.
But, all right, we're going back to the game here.
It looks like they're doing a rewind.
Okay. So we're going to take that down. We're going to rewind. We're going to put the Force of Will back in hand. We're going to put the land back in hand. We're going to put the Oko back up to 7, I imagine, and then go back through that hand, back through that turn. We're going to reset those life totals as well.
Yeah.
And up to 7 on that Oko. Yep. All right, cool. So as they fix this up, I'm going to finish my little story about playing with Sam Woy.
Yep.
We were testing and I was telling him about how I'm pretty confident with this matchup. Like, I think I've got it down pat. And he's like, I don't think the matchup's good. And it turns out that Sam Woy playing with Slick Shot is a little bit different to playing against the average Arena player with Slick Shot.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
The number of times that I kept mana open, I'm like, I'm going to kill something this turn. And he's like, I'm going to put Slick Shot aside.
Yeah.
And then next I'm like, oh, he's going to play that Slick Shot. And he's like, no, I'm going to put another one aside. And then he just got so much mana advantage from that.
Yeah, and Slick Shot as well. Not applicable in this format, but so scary in multiples as well when you're plotting them, as everyone's just scared of hasty 9-power creatures coming out of nowhere.
Yeah. So we've got a tick up on Oko, which was our original guess.
Our original guess.
Yeah. I think that we instinctively knew what we would do in that position, and we missed something, and both of us actually thought, oh, we missed that. That's an excellent play. Instead, we missed something else. All right, so Oko's ticked up to turn that 1 ring into an elk, and then we've seen no attacks here. There is an advantage here for Chris. Being able to know exactly what's in, like a very relevant card in Daniel Hohaus's hand.
Yeah, knowing about that Force of Will is maybe going to change Chris's line here. So he plays the land, but I guess he may not want to run the Khan out anymore.
He might be thinking to himself, you know what? I've got this Cavern of Souls. I can actually resolve like a less powerful spell here. Not exactly what I want, but I can actually resolve it.
Yeah, and I really like the channeler here because it means that Chris is going to be able to have more mana, allowing him guaranteed to being able to at least try and cast the Ugin in his hand. The Ugin, of course, being able to exile something when cast means even if it gets Force of Willed, it's going to be value.
Yeah, for sure.
And if it doesn't get countered, it's even scarier.
Yeah.
So I think Daniel here is probably considering solituding this.
I reckon that's a pretty easy solitude here.
Yeah, but at the same time, he can just elk it.
Good point. But like, what else are you going to spend your mana on?
Yeah, you wouldn't be otherwise. So I guess he's choosing to solitude it.
Yep, solitude at end of turn. Gain some life for Chris, but also putting a solitude in play. And when Chris is probably just going to have 3/3s for the rest of this game unless he kills that Oko.
Yeah.
But 3/2 solitude is going to be a good little trade as well.
So Oko here is probably going to just make a food, threatening the next turn to exchange the food for the One Ring Elk.
Yeah.
And then,
so we'll actually see that trade eventually.
And then maybe trying to find a way to unelk it.
Oh, this is big.
So expressive iteration of seeing Dig Through Time, Force of Negation, and Scalding Tarn. Gets the Scalding Tarn for the turn, puts the Dig Through Time into hand, and I believe that is a fear of missing out in Daniel's hand to go along with it. So he's got some protection. He will have to pitch to the Force currently, pitching the Dig Through Time, which may not be something he wants to do.
Oh, hang on, do you? Do you need to do that? Because you've got a Scalding Tarn here. You've got 3 cards in the graveyard. You crack that Scalding Tarn. That puts you to 4 cards in the side.
On the expressive iteration is 5.
Yep, as well. So that actually means that you can actually just hard cast that Dig Through Time and say, you know what? I'm going to find like at least 1 blue card.
You'd hope so.
Yeah.
There's a lot of blue cards in the deck. There's a lot of cards which are many different colors. But if you're playing a Force of Will deck, chances are you're playing a lot of blue cards.
So we'll see a considered block from Chris Meli here.
Yeah. Blocking the Solitude, because lifelink is quite powerful. I think it's worth more than the 1 toughness, especially when Chris's deck is looking to do large numbers instead. The difference between 2 and 3 toughness, not a huge lot.
Yeah. Now, if you're in Hohaus's position here, you got that Scalding Tarn, you've just traded off that Solitude, so now you've got 5 cards in the graveyard. You can go to a 6th card in the graveyard. You could main phase that Dig Through Time, or you could kind of keep mana open and work out what cards do I actually want with this Dig Through Time? What do you think the considerations there between main phasing it and playing it in response to a spell or at end of turn from Chris?
So I think that if Daniel were to main phase it, it means he'd be looking for another threat alongside the interaction for the Force of Will. However, he does have 2 basics in place. So that makes his mana a bit constrictive in terms of what threats he would be able to deploy with the Dig Through Time. So I think it's a much safer play to just leave it a turn.
Yeah, I think that's pretty tight, but also I love playing a main phase Dig Through Time.
Main phase Dig Through Time can be very good, especially if you're comboing off.
Yeah.
So Khan coming into play here, and Chris is going to his sideboard looking at what options he has to try and deal with a lot of this stuff, because he is very behind on board, and that Khan is rather unprotected.
So we've ticked it down to 3, and this is such a tight play for Chris. He knows that he's short on lands, and so he's actually got an artifact land in his sideboard, and he's going, you know what, I'm going to tick down Khan, I'm going to get an artifact land from my sideboard, I'm going to play land for turn, make sure I don't miss my land drop.
Yep, so choosing to get the Treasure Vault, the newest printed artifact land, I believe, at least in a standard legal set. It's really a cool card, and there's always been a lot of debate in Pioneer, especially around mono green, with Khan, if it's playing Treasure Vault or Darksteel Citadel. And you can probably make similar arguments in Highlander, but I think that especially game 1, where Khan is more powerful, Treasure Vault is a more powerful card than Darksteel Citadel, because your opponents often aren't playing mass artifact removal game 1.
Yep.
However, I believe because it is an artifact land, Oko can elk it?
Ooh. Let's have a look at this Oko. I've still got it up here. Target artifact or creature loses all abilities and becomes a green elk creature with base power and toughness 3 and 3. That is a spicy play, Kakawa. I like it. I like it.
Oko being a Stone Rain.
Yeah, I don't think I would have seen that play. I don't think I've ever looked at my opponent's lands for a target for my own Oko in play.
Yeah, it's not something that comes up often. It's the same as a Saga being enchantment. There's a lot of weird interactions you can go with it. So Daniel choosing what to take with this Dig Through Time here. A lot of good options here, like Teferi, Murktide, Felia, Morlock.
So I think we see a Teferi and a Subtlety as the current cards that are down. So the Subtlety is definitely down. And then we're trying to work out what the other card is. Morlock, yeah.
What's the best thing you can do with Felia on this board? Because he's heavily considering taking it.
Yeah, so one of the cool things is that you can exchange your food with an opponent's card, and then you can attack the failure with a failure and blink the token that you've exchanged from the Oko, and basically get rid of it.
Yeah, that's pretty good. And Oko with a lot of loyalty counters here. Doesn't look like it's at threat of being removed anytime soon. So he's picked up the subtlety, has the force of will, has a fear of missing out, and a failure. So Daniel's covering a lot of fronts here, and is probably going to answer this Khan first thing, and then probably considers maybe elking the treasure vault.
Yeah, yeah. If he sees it,
If he sees it,
I think it's a big ask.
So being able to play the land here as well means that he's going to be able to leave open failure and hardcast force of will or subtlety.
Yep. So let's have a look at it, and choosing to buff up the food into an elk.
Yep, perfectly reasonable as well, just to present a quick clock. If you have an answer for your opponent's threat, maybe the amount of mana they have isn't as relevant.
So attacking for 9 damage, putting Chris down to 6, and having the force of will up.
Yep, 3 at the Khan, so I think Chris is going to go down to 12?
3, 4, 5, 6, yep, okay. I
think Daniel might have sent both of the elks at...
This is a pretty clutch play.
Okay.
I was going to ask you this question. Do you send 2 at the Khan in case there's a dismember?
In these situations, yes. Just because it is closed deck list, there are very few things that Eldrazi can play in terms of removal, but usually what it can play is cheap and effective.
Yeah, so the option that Daniel had here was attack Chris with everything, right? Put him to 6. Or attack him for 3 damage, put him to 12, and definitely kill this Khan. Or attack him for 3, 4, 5, 6 damage, and probably kill the Khan, but maybe gets caught up by a dismember.
I'm in favor of the conservative play here. I don't think Daniel needs to get greedy with a hand as stacked as he's got.
Yeah, so subtly in hand, plus the force of will that Chris knows about, and that's leading to an immediate concession, knowing about that force of will as well.
Yeah. It's a good card to know about, and maybe good way to learn to concede sometimes.
Yeah. I think I would have really loved to have seen the
Elk treasure vault?
Yeah, that would have been very cool.
The real treasure was the elk. All right, so players are shuffling up for game 2. What are you sideboarding? I'm going to ask mostly from the Daniel's side.
Yeah, so from Daniel's side, he's going to be thinking, all right, colorless spells, Snap going to include this consign to memory, which is pretty amazing. And then you go, oh, I don't know really what else. Do I want a Winds of Abandon to be able to exile some more things? Do I want Stony Silence? Because there are a couple of artifacts that produce mana, but it's also not going to stop any Eldrazi. And then, other than that, I'm looking at my sideboard and going, you know what? It's kind of a bit more suited against traditional workshop artifacts rather than the Eldrazi version.
Yeah. So what we've got on the screen at the moment is we've got a Ledger Shredder, and we're being attacked by 2 tokens of some description and a Dragon's Rage Channeler, which I'm going to assume is a 3/3 based on that large pile of cards in the graveyard.
Yeah, this is pretty cool. That Fast Bond, unpointed card, can produce some really incredible draws, but also if you don't have the Crucible, if you don't have the lands, then it doesn't do as much. Makes sense?
No, we're tapping 5 here, paying full retail for a Fury, killing this Ledger Shredder and clearing the way for these creatures to get in.
Yeah.
And he's taken the game.
All right.
And it looks like it was probably a lethal attack.
Yeah.
So that means those players are shuffling up for game 3.
So if you are on the other side of this, you're playing Chris. You are Chris. You're playing Eldrazi. You're playing against like a 4-color soup of time walks. What are you considering to bring in?
So the first thing I'm looking to bring in is any of the green cards that I have in my sideboard, like this Carpet of Flowers and maybe this Choke. Being able to attack blue mana is very powerful against these kinds of decks because they do still play a lot of blue sources. And a lot of the other sideboard cards Chris has access to, he probably wants to keep in his sideboard for Khan.
Yeah, for sure. Now, we know Daniel Hohaus's list, right? And we know that there isn't a natural order there. But we also know that natural order has recently been depointed. So if you are on Chris's side, are you thinking to yourself, do I side in this Grafdigger's Cage? Do I like preemptively bring in a Grafdigger's Cage to shut down a birthing pod, shut down a natural order, and protect myself from that eventuality? Or do you go, you know what, I haven't seen it yet, so I'm not going to side it in?
I think at the moment I would consider it, but I think it would be too narrow in terms of the amount of targets. Because this is a multicolored deck with a lot of colors that aren't green, it's less likely to be playing something like Green Sun Zenith. So I feel like you might just not have enough targets for this Grafdigger's Cage, to, like, especially on a speculation.
Yeah, it's an interesting decision, though.
It also, if a natural order happens and something like an Atraxa comes out, as the Eldrazi deck, you can still deal with it. So Chris leading us off with a fast start of Urza's Tower into a Mana Vault, which is going to have some very scary turn 2, I reckon.
Yep. So both players playing a Mana Accelerator in turn 1. Difference is Chris is immediately taps for 3, whereas that Birds of Paradise does get to untap, which is definitely an upside, and taps for any mana, but doesn't have as much explosion. So Chris having access to a minimum of 4 mana here, but playing a land, weeds it to 5. It could be even more.
It could be. It looks like the other land in his hand is a Cloud Post, which does come into play tap, but he still has access to 4 mana and could drop a Karn here if he so chose.
Okay, which Karn is that one?
Karn,
the Great Creator?
Yeah, the Karn that is going to access his entire sideboard that he's probably not brought a lot of cards in from.
Yep. And then the other option is a card that recently got pointed, which I can't see in Chris's hand, but Planar Nexus.
Planar Nexus is a very fun card, counting as all non-basic land types to allow these Tron lands to turn on, make the Cloud Post better. It really does everything. Yeah. And it's really weird how it works with Urza's Tower, because it counts as both other land types. So just Planar Nexus and Urza's Tower alone tap for 4 mana together.
Wow, fantastic.
There have been decks in Legacy that were just playing 4 Urza's Tower and no other Urza lands, just because of Planar Nexus.
Chris saying, you know what? I am going to run this Karn out. I'm going to run it out. I'm going to tick it down. Maybe I'll get a liquid metal coating to go, you know what? Infinite Stone Raids for the rest of the game.
And Daniel, basically forcing Daniel to have the force there, really.
Yep.
And Daniel did not have it. So he's going to have access to 3 mana. He's got a Stony Silence in his hand, a Consign to Memory, and it's a Teferi. So I think he's choosing between playing the Stony Silence and leaving open the Consign, or playing the Teferi. Unfortunately, playing the Teferi isn't going to do much by itself, as bouncing the Mana Vault is a bit counterproductive.
Yeah, the actual opposite of what you want. So
chooses to go
for a Preordain.
Yep. So he's a Pyrogoyf and a Misstep.
Well, that Misstep didn't get to counter that Mana Vault, so it's probably going to go to the bottom. But that Pyrogoyf might stay on top.
Yep.
All right.
Still choosing.
Right. Yep.
Pyrogoyf to the top, to the bottom there.
Pyrogoyf on top and Mental Misstep to the bottom. We draw that card. And do we see a Consign kept up or running out the Stony Silence?
I like running out the Stony Silence here, as it preemptively shuts down the liquid metal coating that Chris has already spent resources getting.
Yeah.
But Chris does have access to other things he could get that maybe get around the liquid metal coating. Yeah.
So we can tick Karn down and we can get a couple of different things. We might get Chalice of the Void. We might get Grafdigger's Cage or Haywire Might.
Trinisphere.
Sphere of Resistance, Thorn of Amethyst, Torpor Orb if we wanted to stop some coming to play effects.
Yeah, you turn my artifacts off, I turn your creatures off. Seems fair.
Yeah.
And a third land for Chris in the form of Drowner of Truth, I believe it is. Yep. Coming into play tapped. Really fantastic cycle from Modern Horizons 3. Spatial Contortions on the Bird. One of Eldrazi's few removal spells. And what do you think Karn is going to do this turn?
I think we're going to say, look at the sideboard, and I reckon we're going to tick it down for something, thinking to himself, you know what? It might actually die. Might die to a lightning bolt or something. Oh, I'm wrong. Tick up and say, you know what? I'm not going to die to a lightning bolt or something, Isaac, because I'm going to be on 4. So there's something would have to do 4 damage rather than 3.
So Daniel has land drops 3 and 4 available to him, an Ephemerate and a Pyrogoyf. So choosing to leave open the Consign to Memory and not cast the Teferi. I think he's wanting to get some sort of immediate tempo swing out of the Teferi by bouncing something from Chris's play.
That makes sense to me. And keeping up consigned to memory here. This is a card that's seen a lot of sideboard play since the increase in Eldrazi and artifacts in general. It's got a bit of splash damage against Storm as well. So if we pull up consigned to memory, a single blue, counter target triggered ability or colorless spell.
Yeah.
But really importantly, you've got a bit of option here to pay, what is it, replicate?
Replicate, yeah. So being able to play multiple copies and target multiple things means the card fights through counter magic way more effectively.
Yeah.
So Daniel, with nothing happening from Chris' side of the board, goes for a Thundering Force to try and shape his hand a bit more. Chris, mind you, has gotten the Cavern of Souls, which is a little bit scary from Daniel to Daniel. Now we see a Brainstorm picked up along with that fetch land. And be interesting to see if Daniel decides to go for the Brainstorm and shape his hand more or develop the Goyf.
Yep. All right. So we see a Brainstorm there saying, you know what, I could run out this Pyrogoyf, but I still want to keep this consign open.
Oh, draws Felia, Oko, and Fourth Aerolingus.
Whoa. Whoa. What do you play here? This is too much. This is too much. My brain's overloading. Too many options.
My opponent has 4 open mana. I think I'm leaving open Felia and Consign.
And just putting a couple of cards back.
Putting a couple of cards back and maybe even not shuffling.
Yeah.
But I don't think... I think the Teferi can be kept for a later stage, see if it's relevant.
For sure. For sure. So notably, there's nothing in Chris's sideboard that he can get with this Khan that says destroy target Stony Silence.
Unfortunately, the Haywire Might's ability is an activated ability, so Stony Silence does shut it off. Chris going for the Sowing Mica Spawn, which is going to let him get a land of his choosing. Planar Nexus, that's going to turn the Urza's Tower on and give him access to quite a lot more mana very quickly. So, putting a creature in play as well, annoying for this Fourth Aerolingus plan, especially one that is bigger than the Rohirrim Knights.
So if you're in Daniel's position there, you know that you can't counter the Sowing Mica Spawn, but you can counter the triggered ability. What do you reckon you'd do?
Well, you can do both, I believe, because it is devoid.
Yes.
So there's a color spell.
But the Cavern of Souls.
Oh, the Cavern of Souls, of course.
The Cavern of Souls has made it uncounterable.
Yeah.
But the triggered ability isn't counterable.
I don't think I counter the ability there. I think I want to save the consign for something bigger, like a Planeswalker, a One Ring, some giant non-creature that I'm going to otherwise have difficulty dealing with.
Yeah, look, I think that's a pretty smart play. Pretty smart play. But also something to consider, considering just how relevant that Planar Nexus is in, looks like it's 1, 2, 3, 4 mana just by itself.
It is representing 4 mana from it just coming into play. That is true. Daniel flashing in Ophelia here. This is going to allow him to put some pressure on the Khan if he chooses by flickering the Sowing Mica Spawn, which of course is a cast trigger and not an ETB trigger.
Yep, or we might see Pyrogoyf killing the Mica Spawn and then attacking.
Yep.
Right.
So I think Daniel would have really loved to have drawn a 5th land there just so he could have left open Ephemerate or the Consign to Memory.
And that's why we probably saw that shuffle at the end of turn there, knowing the top 2 cards of the library from Brainstorm.
Yep. So Pyrogoyf getting rid of this Mica Spawn. And then Felia is going to blink the Goyf, which means a lot of damage is going to come back. So Felia is going to attack Khan, Goyf is going to come into play and shoot the Khan and finish it off.
That's a solid play there.
That's nice and clean.
That's a lot of damage. A lot of damage.
All right.
So Chris has access to a lot of mana here.
And all is dust.
All is dust. Now that is a card that kills Stony Silence.
It sure does. It also kills Felia and Pyrogoyf on the way too.
Yeah, for sure. So not hitting that land there, I reckon is going to be pretty darn relevant.
Yep. And Chris has drawn an Ancient Tomb, giving him access to even more mana. So he's could tap 2 lands for 5 mana there. So he's got more than enough mana to cast this All Is Dust.
He's just thinking to himself, how dead am I to a Force of Will? Can I play around this? Can I play around Force of Negation? I saw the Force of Will last game. So let me stop. Let me just take a breath and think about exactly what I want to do here.
Yeah, so the Force of Will hasn't necessarily been played earlier. It may not be in the opening hand, seeing as we did have a Mana Vault into a Khan start. And since then, a Preordain got played first then, but since then a Brainstorm has happened, allowing Daniel to shuffle his hand. So
and that all dust resolves.
All his dust resolves, which is going to unlock this Mana Vault as well. He may want to consider untapping it at some point, because he does have so much mana. But with the Kozilek's Command in his hand, a lot of mana is really good.
Yeah.
Daniel's drawn a Collector Roof by the looks of it.
Okay, okay. So you get rid of Stony Silence number 1. How about Stony Silence number 2?
Yep. This one being a creature, slightly easier to interact with, but...
So then we see a Cycle and Lorien revealed, finding an island out of my deck.
Yeah, so he's going to be able to leave open mana again, as well as potentially the Ephemerate.
Yep, for sure. What are your thoughts on Lorien revealed as card?
I think it's really good.
Yeah?
It pitches to force and finds a land. It puts a card in your graveyard if you cycle it. It does so much, and finds Mystic Sanctuary. The amount of times I've seen people like Lorien revealed for their 5th land, which is just a Mystic Sanctuary, to put Lorien revealed back on top and just draw a bunch of cards, it's quite a few times.
Yeah, yeah. That being able to pitch to Forcible and Force Negation is big game. Also, under a Blood Moon, right? Finding your basic island is normally very, very hard, but you know, I can tap my mountain for 1 colorless or 1 mountain, 1 red, and search my library for that 1 basic island, and be able to play the rest of my blue spells in my hand if I'm currently under a Blood Moon.
Yeah, might even allow you to play the Hydro Blast to kill the Blood Moon.
True.
All right, so Chris in the tank, considering he's got access to a Khan Silex, a Liquid Metal Coating, and a Kozilek's Command. Only one of these any sort of use, but as we know, Daniel has the Ephemerate, but he's choosing to tap out for the 4th Aerolingus.
All right. So you don't play counter spells. You don't play Force of Will.
One thing Chris can do, though, is play the Kozilek's Command and make a bunch of blockers.
Ah, but they have Trample, though.
Oh, they do have Trample.
Yeah.
So Daniel going to get 3 Knights here.
So maybe we'll pull up Kozilek's Command. Colorless, and X. So you've got to pay the actual colorless, which Chris definitely can do. And then you have the ability to target player creates X01 colorless Eldrazi spawn creature tokens, which have the ability to sacrifice for 1 mana. Target player scries X and then draws a card. Exile target creature with mana value X or less. Exile up to X target cards from graveyards.
A lot of modes on that card.
Yeah.
But that's what the commands do usually.
So I reckon we're going to see a hell of a lot of creatures here, and then a scry X and draw a card.
Yep, I think Chris is going to look for a big mana play. So also opting not to use the Ancient Tomb to take damage and create more spawn or dig deeper.
Looks like 7 Eldrazi Scions to me, plus a scry 7 and then draw a card, which is probably going to find you something that can either get the Monarch.
And Daniel's completely tapped out as well, and shields are down because he's tapped out for this 4th Aerolingus. So it looks like he's chosen to exile. I think he's just trying to stop the Monarch being taken here. So, Chris deciding where he's going to block. And Chris is looking around to see how he can best block amongst these trample knights.
Yeah, so we've got options to either block a bunch of things and maybe try something different, or have a bunch of just Eldrazi Signs in play and take a bit of damage, but then not die so much.
Yeah.
Not die so much, not take as much damage.
So much dice.
All right. Instead, I think it looks like we're saying, you know what? I don't want the Monarch in this at all. So I want to just block with everything.
Look, that's reasonable. I think that if I could prevent the Monarch from entering a game, I would do it all the time.
Yeah. Now, it looks like we've still got 2 in play here. I actually think that we should be only having 1 in play if the Monarch hasn't been gotten at this point in time.
Well, he only needed to commit 1 to the Collector Roof because it doesn't have Trample.
Of course, yeah.
I think the players are talking about the match maybe being finished. Yeah, they're shaking up. It looks like the other matches have finished.
Wow, that means that the exciting plays with that Eldrazi deck versus this 4-color deck actually doesn't get finished because the other players in this team manage to finish their matches too quickly. So one of the best things about being in a team is that sometimes you get carried.
Yep, and Daniel Hohaus' team has picked up the win here against Josh, Max, and Chris. So they're going to be pretty happy moving to 4-1 with 2 rounds left to go. 4-1
with 2 rounds left to go. It's going to be a cut to top 4.
Yep.
And then we're going to see a playoff.
Yep.
Let's come back to the booth. Let's talk about this and give us your assessment. If that game was to continue, where do you reckon it was going to go?
I think it comes down a lot to the top decks, unfortunately, because the Eldrazi deck can top deck so well, especially when it has access to all this mana. Big threats happen, haymakers all the time. Things like All Is Dust, there's not just one kind of thing of that in the deck. However, the Karn Silex being shut off by the Collector Roof could have negated that a bit more, but if he was able to answer the Collector Roof, that Karn Silex is another board wipe.
Another board wipe. So it would have been a really interesting game. 2 players battling out. Really cool matchup. Unfortunately, sometimes when you have a really cool matchup, it means that it's back and forth and it's really tight, and your teammates are either winning too fast or losing too fast.
Yep.
Which, I don't know, it's just one of the best things about teams is that you can actually play with your teams in a way, like your teammates in a way that means that sometimes you get carried.
Yep.
But if you lose, that means you've got 2 people to kind of commiserate with.
Yeah. And it can always be really exciting as well. You're just like in a really stressful situation in a match. You're losing. You're trying to think, how do I best get out of this? I've got no outs. And then your teammates win. You're like, oh, I guess that was my out.
Oh, yeah, that was an excellent out.
Excellent out. Teammates winning.
All right. Well, thanks very much for joining us. Isaac, Lee, Dylan, Kakawa. Really glad to be here with you. We're going to be back with round 6 shortly. The 2 of us are going to be commentating again. When that happens, you'll be able to see our lovely faces and our lovely commentary. Until then, thanks very much for being part of the coverage at Mana Clash 2025.
See you around 6.